If style mattered, every Assassin's Creed combined couldn't beat AC3. Valhalla is the only Creed game where I don't feel like I messed up when I blow my cover, thanks to the messed up stealth mechanics but also the underrated combat system. Unity tries to blend Assassin's Creed with medieval combat, and let me tell you, that blend is pretty good. Unity was a complete revamp of Assassin's Creed combat. That revamp lasted exactly one game, but it was a revamp nonetheless. You were still sneaking around 90% of the time, but now you could actually sneak around instead of walking around and looking for bushes like a bum. That is, if you were any good. But when you did get into open combat, it just felt wrong, like you messed up your entire mission up until that point. That feeling is more prevalent in Unity than anything since. When you did go fighting in the open against multiple enemies, the first thing you will be reminded of is not to do that ever again. Because Arno doesn't have the counter kill genes from Edward that Haytham and Connor have. The game is challenging. 1 or 2 shots from higher level enemies is pretty much lights out. Sometimes not even that. An enemy will move away and shoot you while you're fighting the other 9. It's not fair, and rightfully so. And Black Flag enemies will line up one by one waiting to be countered like good little boys. So that was a nice and much needed change in Unity. But if you really want, you can make combat a walk in the park. Guns, phantom blades, berserk blades combined with smoke bombs is a cheat code, plain and simple. Using those things a lot does suck the joy out of the game, so there is that. As far as animations go, Ubisoft have done a great job. There are a few parry animations that look great, finishers are just beautiful, and unlike some other games, you aren't blessed with finishers whenever the game feels like it. Your enemies will start staggering once you've almost beaten them and you can deliver the finishing blow. They look great and are incredibly satisfying, though sometimes the typical Ubisoft bugginess gets in the way. But make no mistake, Unity is a stealth game through and through, more so than any Assassin's Creed before or since. Maybe AC1 is more stealth oriented, but Syndicate, Valhalla or Odyssey are action games with stealth elements thrown in them because of the franchise they belong to. You can finally crouch, there's social stealth. I mean, the amount of NPCs at any time when you're out on the streets is still insane. Blending in with the crowd was a big part of the game. There are basically only 2 types of missions. Either you infiltrate a palace or you have to assassinate someone in the middle of a gathering, or some sort of blend of those two. I definitely had more fun infiltrating palaces. There are many entries, many windows to awkwardly strafe around trying to get in, so the great parkour system is always right there in your back pocket. There are often distractions that you can use to your advantage. The game says these are distractions, but it's just you fighting a dozen enemies for a tiny advantage. Each time Arno does that weird thing before assassination missions, I feel this sense of complete freedom, not a single restriction in place. That is, if the game decides to work. You can do anything, well, except enter windows, and Paris's architecture makes this part so much more fun. Valhalla isn't ever going to be my favorite Creed game, but one of the few things that I love about this mess of a game is combat. Stealth is awkward, clunky and frustrating. It is infinitely better to take on a typical RPG approach, button mashing until you're the only one left. The combat system itself is somewhat deep, lock in, fast and strong attacks, dodge, parry and finishers. So yeah, the usual RPG stuff, but with the added bonus of trademark Ubisoft quality. I feel out of the recent trilogy, Valhalla has the most enjoyable combat, of course when you forget about stealth. This might be the only Assassin's Creed wherein getting detected doesn't feel wrong at all. In fact, the game encourages you to take a more boneheaded approach. I never felt like getting through combat sections quickly. In fact, it was quite the opposite. I took my time because a game lasting 150 hours just isn't enough. Dodging and parrying and slowly winning the battle, boss battles especially. When you're fighting multiple enemies, things can get awkward and messy and all over the place, but 1v1 fights are fun through and through. The major problem is just repetitiveness. I mean, you go through the same finishing animation for a million times The game is at least 70 hours on a somewhat focused playthrough played by a robot. Animations getting old is inevitable, but it shouldn't get stale so fast. Assassin's Creed 3 is a prime example of doing this right. There are so many animations that you will not only tolerate combat, but actually look forward to them, even in the later sections of the game after you have spent dozens of hours fighting. Assassin's Creed 3's combat was my personal favorite out of the earlier games, though Assassin's Creed 1 comes really close. In fact, AC1 almost made this comparison. Altair is a legendary assassin, but he still comes off human who has gone through grueling training to fight like he fights. Connor is nowhere near human. He is basically Superman running around America in the 1700s. No enemy is a match. In fact, an army is no match. I'd really like to see how many enemies it takes to truly beat him, because most of the time you die because you're either careless or bored with one-shotting enemies that you just drift off. All it takes is one counter, and the counter window lasts about as long as the American Revolutionary War. Against stronger enemies, usually carrying swords, it's just a little more challenging. You have to unarm them before doing the usual, but it's not like that's all that hard. I mean, how hard is it to unarm a trained killer who spent his entire life with a weapon in his hand? At least Connor doing that is believable. I mean, he looks like a tank in human form. What's funny is Haytham doing that. Even Assassin's Creed style kills with the hidden blade are brutal. You don't just stab someone from behind, you stab them and slam them onto the ground. Same with rooftop kills. Connor jumps onto them with such force that a blade is just not necessary. The game takes this to an absurd degree, complete with pro wrestling finishes. There's also a bit of sleeping dog style action, interacting with the environment. You can throw enemies against walls, through tables and such. Usually the easier the game, the faster I lose interest, but Assassin's Creed 3 is so savage that the non-existent level of challenge never gets in the way. That's kind of why I picked AC3 over 2. AC1 is good because it makes you think, but it is kind of dated by now. Even back in the day, it wasn't all that polished. All the more reason to appreciate Ubisoft for AC2, which is the most well-rounded game in the series, and it was just a second title, and it came after AC1, which was about as close as to being broken as you can get without actually being broke. Combat in AC2 wasn't something I enjoyed. It was a mind-numbing exercise that makes me sigh every single time without fail. Too many enemies line up beating you up from all angles. Even when you win, it's not pretty or satisfying. Maybe that was the point, to make players take the stealth route. Animations weren't as good unless you were performing silent assassinations. AC3 on the other hand is super smooth. You even fight animals with quick time events. Run into a bear with a head that weighs as much as your body? No problem, just press X and Y a couple of times and you're good to go. This makes the game look cinematic, but it's not creative and is boring for the player, but still funny though. This was much closer than I thought when I began writing this. Unity has the perfect style of AC combat, at least in my opinion. The game still pushes you towards stealth, but open combat is more than good enough when you do blow your cover. Every Assassin's Creed before Unity was building up towards this. A great stealth system combined with strong general combat. Valhalla has incredibly frustrating stealth, but open combat makes up for it. AC3 is stylish, brutal and fast, but it is a very shallow system when you look past the cool exterior. If this was about the complete combat package, it would have been Unity, but just open combat means Valhalla takes the cake.